Hey friends, welcome. My name is Art Murphy. I'm the founder of Children's Ministry Solutions. My entire adult life has been spent helping churches and families raise children that become followers of Jesus Christ. It is truly an honor to serve the Lord in this way. You can learn more about me, my credentials, this ministry, a sample of churches I have assisted, and discover some helpful resources at childrensministrysolutions.com. Early in my ministry, I quickly discovered two major challenges. The first challenge was children and Christianity, specifically children and salvation. I noticed that pastors, parents, children's ministry leaders, and educators struggled with this and had many differing views about children and Christianity. Many of these were not based on scripture or solid research. There was very little research back then. Most were based on opinions, convenience, or pressure. I prayed, God, please help me understand how to approach children the right way, and I'll teach others. I'll help others. Anyone who wants to join this bandwagon, they can benefit too. Lord, teach me and I'll teach others. And God answered that prayer. After 20 years of research, which included working 17 years at a mega church that had 2,000 children, I was able to conduct thousands of interviews with children, parents, volunteers, church leaders, and I baptized over 1,300 children during that time. Now, I didn't plan to do a research project, but God just dropped it in my lap. I prayed. He gave me the experience that I had never read about in seminary or graduate school. I began noticing different levels of spiritual maturity. They had specific characteristics at each stage. And I noticed different patterns. I began sharing these with top children's ministry leaders around the country. As a result, I began teaching these principles to church leaders in hundreds of cities and at state and national training events. This led to producing two resources now used by thousands of children's ministry leaders and parents and pastors. The first is The Faith of a Child. It's a 147-page book published by Moody Publishers, and you can get a copy at my website or going to their website. But it includes these topics found from the research I just explained, topics like the 4 stages of a child's spiritual development, or how to talk to a child about God, the 5 signs that a child is ready to become a Christian, and the 4 signs that a child is not ready. Boy, it's so good to have these signs to help us get a handle when we're talking to our children about the Lord and about following Him. These signs will help you take their spiritual temperature. It also includes things like the biggest mistakes that parents and churches make, and many, many more topics. The second resource is Step by Step Leading Your Child to Christ, and it is a 7-part video course for pastors, parents, and children's ministry volunteers and children's ministry leaders. Step by Step includes the same topics I just mentioned, plus information on how to counsel children and parents when they visit your office, and also how to plan a child's baptism. Well, the second major challenge I discovered early in my ministry was this. You guessed it, recruiting children's ministry volunteers, specifically recruiting enough volunteers. Here are some facts you may need to know about children's ministry volunteers. Most churches struggle to have enough children's ministry volunteers. The lack of children's ministry volunteers is a major reason many churches are not growing. Here's a question. Why do most churches fail at recruiting volunteers? The answer is their attempt is outdated and ineffective. So let me give you some brief tips on just successful recruiting. A good approach is to hire a children's director to recruit volunteers. But remember, one person can only do what one person can do. A better approach is to create a serving culture throughout the entire church. Now, creating a culture does not guarantee that the volunteers that step forward will be routed to the areas in the church that need the most help, specifically the children's ministry. Here's the best approach I've found, and that's to build a recruiting system. And I have great news. There is a resource that will help you do just that. It will help you succeed at recruiting volunteers for your ministry. And it is called How to Win at Recruiting Children's Ministry Volunteers. It includes 10 strategies for building a proven recruiting system. And no matter what size church you serve, you can win at recruiting volunteers. You can. Let's take a look at the 10 strategies that are in this training. Okay? The first strategy you will learn in how to win at recruiting. You will learn how to maximize your recruiting potential. Is anything keeping you from succeeding? This will identify those things. The second strategy is creating a personal recruiting checklist. Now, once you have a recruiting system in place, will you be able to stop recruiting yourself? Well, the answer is no. You'll recruit a different type of person, but when your recruiting system is in place, your recruiting responsibilities will change. A third strategy is recruiting assignments for your church staff. Can you believe that? No one's ever dealt with this. Should the pastor publicly beg for volunteers for your ministry? When there are visitors in the room and he stands on stage and begs people to volunteer, and 10 people get up to go volunteer in preschool, well, they're not going to volunteer. Those are 10 families getting up to go get their preschooler who's in danger. So let's be careful. I'm going to share with you what role the pastor and other staff should play to help make recruiting a success. You will love this strategy. It is powerful. That's all I'm saying. Number 4, recruiting your children's ministry leadership team. It is amazing to me how many children's ministry leaders of all size churches do not have a leadership team in place, or they do not have the right positions on their team. Number 5, 15 ways to quickly double your volunteers. Now, I know that most that check out this training series will skip the first 4 strategies because they'll go directly to number 5. Why? Because they are desperate. We've all been there. Maybe you're there right now, and you need help now. Well, don't skip the first 4, but number 5 will give you some quick ways to give a kind of jump start and give your ministry a little shock treatment. What's number 6? Recruiting parents. How do we effectively recruit parents? Should all parents serve? What about those parents we really don't want to be around children? I'll deal with that. You'll love this. We don't want to beat parents up. We want to involve and inspire them. Number 7, marketing tips for recruiting volunteers. How do we promote the value of working with children in the most positive way? We don't want to guilt people into serving. We don't want to shame people. How should the children's ministry be represented in your church and community? What are the billboards you will choose to represent your ministry, to give your message? What is the message you want to convey to your church family? And what are some successful ways to accomplish that, to get that message, that valuable message, into your church culture, into the church DNA? Strategy number 8 is all about program improvements that can strengthen recruiting. Almost every church I help discovers the importance of tweaking their programs and schedule to become more effective in recruiting volunteers. Some schedules and programs are not volunteer friendly. They can be inconvenient, they can be intimidating. Strategy number 9 gives tips for interviewing potential volunteers. Now, many people don't even do an interview, but I'm going to recommend 2 interviews. And interviewing plays a major role in a potential volunteer's decision to serve. These tips will help you do interviews right. And the 10th, but not least, last but not least strategy is keeping the volunteers that you have. Happy customers tell other potential customers. Unhappy customers tell even more of their friends. Learn how to keep your volunteers happy, avoiding burnout, and keep them continuing to serve. If you only apply one of these strategies, you will benefit by increasing your number of volunteers. Maybe you could have a goal of applying 1 to 2 strategies per year. However, many of you can apply most or all of these in a short period of time. Once you understand these strategies, ask yourself, how many strategies could be in place within 6 months? How many within 2 years? Notice that these 10 strategies have a proven track record in building successful recruiting systems. Here are 3 examples of churches who used these recruiting strategies. The first example is a mega church. It averaged 4,000 in attendance. Before they started using these strategies, they had 67 children's ministry volunteers. But after 15 years, that number grew to 725 volunteers. Folks, that is 11 times their original number. That number did not grow because the church grew. That number did not grow because everyone at a mega church wants to serve. Actually, in most cases, it's just the opposite. They've come from places where they burn out and now they want to do nothing, or they've never been in a church and they're not ready to serve. The second church was a large church. It averaged 800 in attendance, and this church began with 25 volunteers in their children's ministry. And in 4 months, that number grew to 148 volunteers, which is 6 times the original number. Folks, that's in 4 months. These strategies work. The third size church was a small church, or I'll say an average church, and they averaged 200 in attendance, and they began with only 6 volunteers. And they had about 25 children. But in just 18 months, that number grew to 95 volunteers. Folks, do you see how huge that is? This is 16 times where they started. As a result, their church then grew from 200 in attendance to 1,800 in attendance. It would have never grown to that size if the children's ministry had not prepared itself. Actually, once the children's ministry had the number of volunteers it needed, it could attract and did attract new families. So, maybe you are a rookie just getting started. You're young in the ministry. Maybe you're a veteran and you've got years of experience. Maybe you're serving in a mega size or a large church that includes hundreds or thousands of children, or in an average or tiny church with just a handful of children. Maybe you're a student in college, seminary, or graduate school, or maybe you're a pastor who does not have a paid staff person to help or lead your children's ministry. No matter who you are or where you serve, your ministry cannot reach its potential if you are not recruiting and equipping others to join you. It's part of being in the family. Don't wear yourself out spinning too many plates, doing jobs that others should be doing. Let me help you shift from being busy to becoming effective. Let me help you recruit an army of committed, passionate volunteers. The link below will explain how to provide this training for your ministry. And thanks, friend, for all you do to reach children and families with God's love and plan for their lives. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.